Yeah.
We're ready.
Hey, Ralph.
Ready?
Yep, we are ready.
First thing I want to show you, Bob, is this right here.
Yes. That
Just
train
did
is stopped.
Huh?
I said that train is stopped.
Just did that.
Oh, but now it's going.
Now it's going. So, okay. That happened while I was getting online.
Naturally. The minute your back is turned.
All right. We're going to talk about the family line system. The railroad that legally never really existed. And to get to why that happened or why they say that is tell you a little bit about the L&M to start with. It came into existence in 1850 with a charter to run a railroad from Louisville to Nashville. And that was built, and from 1850 until 19 it's about 1982 it ran as the L&N Railroad. But in 1902, Atlantic Coast Line bought 51% of the L&N Railroad. It didn't take over the railroad. The railroad ran as a separate railroad on its own, but the Atlantic Coast Line owned 51% of that. How that happened was the L&N was growing and building and buying up little railroads, and J.P. Morgan owned 51% of the L&N, and they got disputing over how they were financing things and what was going on, and J.P. Morgan got mad and sold his 51% to Seaboard Coast Line. And for that reason, the Seaboard Coast Line owned the L&N, but again, they had their own business. They had nothing to do with the Seaboard Coast Line. As time went on, the Seaboard Coast Line, or the Atlantic Coast Line, merged with the Seaboard Airline, and they created the Seaboard Coast Line. And the Seaboard Coast Line in 71 bought up the rest of the L&N Railroad and merged the Atlantic Coast Line, the Seaboard Coast Line, all into the family line system. That also included they purchased the Georgia Railroad, the Durham Southern Railroad, and the Clinchfield A and WP Railroad. And it ran that way where they created this family line system, but they never did really create a railroad because, again, all these railroads, they were owned by the Seaboard Coast Line, but they ran on their own. They all had, they ran the system, and each railroad had its own marketing system. They had their own computer services, purchasing, headquarters, management, dispatchers, everything was separate. And during that time, it was about an 8-year period, they ran as a family line system, but all the family line system was an agreement to cooperate in a marketing ploy with the railroad so that they could sell themselves as a bigger railroad and marketing ploy, but they all ran separately. But then finally, in 1982, the Seaboard Coastline finally merged all of it together with the L&N, the Clinchfield, and all of them, and created the CXX Railroad. Just a little bit of history there, but the family line system never really was a railroad, but there was an 8-year period there that any place you went to in the Southeast, you could find cars and things that had the family line paint scheme, even though it never did. And there was box cars, engines, steam engines all over running around with the family line paint scheme, but yet it was not a real railroad. But anyway, the part of the railroad, the family line system that I'm doing is the Louisville division. It's I'll give you some history on the Louisville L&N, on the L&N to, it was chartered on May 5th, 1850, to build a line from that Louisville to Nashville. It cost $7,200,000, 187 miles, and it took 6 years to build it. And then for the next 123 years, it operated under the L&N name. And by 1980, when it finally was merged into the CSX with the rest of them, it had grown to be a premier railroad of the South with about 5,700 miles of mainline track with the following 9 divisions, with 9 different divisions and operating in 13 different states. Now, just a little more background, and then we'll get to the L&N had 9 different divisions, and I'll show you something here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. They had 9 different divisions. One division was the Cincinnati division, which was right up in here. It hauled 39% of the L&N coal, which was about 177,000 carloads per year. Now, this is all back in the late 70s, early 80s. There was a Montgomery, New Orleans division, which is right in here. And it really, its base for income and all for the L&N was really lumber, the paper mills and pulpwood. There was a Knoxville, Atlanta division, and that division, actually that's the divisions that has the Hiwassee Loop, and that's also the division that J.P. Morgan and them had a disagreement over when he sold his shares of it. There's an Evansville division, which hauls about 9 million tons of coal annually to St. Louis and the Midwest, and in return, it brings back commodities from that part of the country headed to Florida, the South. The Nashville division, it was at the time it was the center of the railroad. In the heyday, it had 28 passenger trains that operated in and out of Nashville daily.
Wow.
A Western and Atlantic division, which was really its claim to fame would be that from the late 1940s to the mid 1960s, it was running from Cartersville to Atlanta, Georgia, it was considered to be the busiest segment of a single track railroad in the nation. The Louisville division, of course, basically runs Louisville to Nashville. It's the only division that really has pretty much all originally owned L&N tracks. Birmingham division, which furnishes the Tennessee Valley Authority with one train of 60 100-ton carloads each day. And then the Cumberland division, which is in the southeastern Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, the coal mining area, some like 10 million tons of coal were produced in the Cumberland Valley division, and they hauled roughly 10 million tons of coal out of there a year. And they even say today, even after all of, the coal mines have been mined for 20, 30 years or whatever it's been, that there's still around 6 billion tons of top grade coal in that area to be harvested. Anyway, that's just a little history as to what the L&N, where it came from, what commodities it carried, what it was doing. When I decided to build the railroad, there was a few things that I wanted to do, and I started in 2013, and I knew that I wanted to put it in my double car garage. I wanted to incorporate a small L-shaped layout and that I had built prior. It was like 8 foot by 6 foot, 2 foot deep, and I had built that over a period of time, and I wanted to go ahead and use it in my new layout. I wanted the layout to be a mushroom type layout. Now, those that don't really know what a mushroom layout is, mushroom layout is one that it's shaped like you see this is, to where if you're on the ground level over here, you're looking at ground level, the track's on this side of the wall, and there's a wall here. And then to look at the track on this side of the wall, you have to walk around, get on a platform that raises you up, so you're looking at the track there. So that's a different way. That's different than just a double deck, and but it gives you the most square footage as far as real estate to build the railroad on, and the least amount of space. It's a little harder to build and a little, a little more expensive. But that's, so I knew I wanted a mushroom layout, or at least some part of a mushroom layout in it. I wanted to have a way to put that L-shaped track that I had already done in it. I wanted to have a helix, and I wanted to have what I called a John Allen wall. And that was a single wall without a shelf on it that had multi-layers of track, many bridges and seams. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the John Allen and this famous railroad, but it, track, train, multi lines running through the wall, bridges, and that's what I was shooting for there. And I wanted to be able to continuously run trains as I worked on my layout. So I got busy, drew up a rough plan of how I wanted, what I thought would be good, what I wanted, had in mind, what I wanted. And then at that time, I probably made my wisest decision that I ever made on building a railroad, because I enlisted Bob Folsom help. Uh, he had a big railroad, as you know, with no scenery, and we kind of decided I'd help him with his scenery. He would help me with my track planning and laying track and wiring. And he hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have this railroad. He's been a lot of help. Okay. So once he came on board, we got busy, started building a railroad plan. Decided we were going to use 5x finished plywood, half-inch for the road bed. And we were going to have with the helix, you go out one way of the helix, you were going to have two layers. You're going out, and each of those going out on one side on the helix on each layer was going to be a place for Cincinnati and Birmingham, Alabama, which mainly was going to be staging yards. It was going to be loop to loop. It's going to be continuous running. And we ended up with a double. Bob, you probably explain.
Okay, I can jump in here. So you have one helix, and you actually have 3 levels, because the John Allen Valley, that scene there, lent itself to putting another level. And so what it ended up is that your upper level is a dog bone, and it functions as a continuous run, and it has a double crossover in it, so you can reverse things. The lower level is a dog bone of its own with a double crossover, and then off of the 2 levels is the helix, so you can run from one level to the other. And the helix is a double track helix, so you can also have a continuous run that runs the complete railroad. Then this, what we refer to as the coal line, is a loop to loop, and it functions as a continuous run because it has reversing boards at each end of it that throw the switch. So when the train makes the loop, the switch throws and it can re-enter the single track main line. And hopefully, if Murphy stays out of the act, you'll be able to demonstrate that for us this evening.
So is the coal line, Bob, is that a 3rd level, or is that
Yes.
built into one of the 2?
It's a 3rd level of its own.
Yeah. What really happened there was, as we were building the layout, we started out, we were going to build it an upper main line and a lower main line, and that was it. And then we got to looking that if we moved the riser here and shoved this leg over here and did some maneuvering without a whole lot of problem, we could wind a coal line in between the 2 of them. And so that's what created the coal line, really. And that's also why the coal line, you only see about half of it. The other half is hidden because we were winding around in under the other part of the layout. Go ahead,
So
Bob.
so Cincinnati and Birmingham are on the upper level or the lower level?
No, Birmingham is on the lower level. Cincinnati is on the upper level.
Oh, okay.
And I'll we're gonna get well. I'll give you a quick view of one thing here. This is a helix right here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
And okay, this is a helix. So the Zone A bridge there on the right, and the helix goes around. Now, I haven't gotten started on Birmingham and Cincinnati yet, but you come out of this end of the helix, and you'll see there's two shells there. The upper one is Cincinnati, which is going to be a staging. The lower one is Birmingham, and it goes way on back in and around. It's going to be actually be the largest yard in the on the railroad, and it's also going to have a industrial end at the end of it, and it's got a car shop and an engine shop and full service facility. So does that answer?
Birmingham and Cincinnati actually split off of the helix right in the curve of the helix. At two different levels, there's a switch which spins off to the Cincinnati yard or the Birmingham yard.
Got it.
So what is, I'll go over this real quick, but what we have, what is I can run dedicated coal trains from, let me put this thing up here. I can run dedicated coal trains from Norton, Virginia to Cincinnati, Ohio, or from Norton, Virginia to Nashville over to Birmingham. Dedicated coal line from Laurel, Kentucky to Mobile, Alabama. Have off-layout short line railroads moving coal from places like such as Roaring Forks and Miller's Yard through the Appalachian Mountains to Loyal, Kentucky, which is this area in here, and have piggybacks running from St. Louis to Cincinnati, St. Louis here, Cincinnati here. This was a main artery to open up products from this part of the country down to Florida, because it ran across here and down this way, and coal went up into the northwest that way and came back with all the products headed in the Florida area, that direction. And it also dedicated intermodals running from Mobile, Alabama, up to Birmingham, on up into Cincinnati or St. Louis. Now, with all that, we'll go look at the railroad. How's that?
So Jim, while you're moving, I'll walk everybody through a run. For example, you pulled out of Cincinnati, you would be on the upper level. You could run the entire upper level. And when you get back to the helix, you jump into the helix and descend to the lower level, run the entire lower level, and arrive at Birmingham. And by
Right.
the
And if you
you add
Right.
up that much trackage, it actually makes a fairly long run.
Right. And if you actually, if you looked at it to where, if you went going one direction on a line, and then you turned around and came back the other direction, if you looked at that as being two different directions, then if you started in one point and ran both directions on the upper level, on the lower level, and you covered the coal line, that main line run would be a little bit over 400 feet. And at 50 miles an hour, something like that, it would take about 23 minutes
Wow.
for the train to do it.
Or if you, yes, similarly, if you started a coal train out of one of the staging tracks that are on the coal line, you ran the entire coal line, which then interfaces with concentric loops with the upper level.
Mm-hmm.
So having run the entire coal line, then you'd go to the upper level, run the whole upper level, and then run that entire scenario. You'd have a huge run of running a trainload of coal to Birmingham, for example, and then take that same train of empties back the other way. Yes, you really have quite a lengthy run.
Right. By the way, since we've been talking, or since I've been talking, I've had 3 trains running. And luckily, they're all 3 still running.
Yay! Victory!
I've got one in that one I showed Bob. I got one that it's every time it gets there, and it's just started this since we started, it runs off track a little bit, and it stops, and I have to put it back on. So let's go back over to the starting point, and I'll walk the railroad with you. Okay. Let me shut this. This is the door that goes into the house. All right. I'm going to start out here. Is that fuzzy? There you go. Okay. We're going to start out here. Go to places I need to start. This is going to be Mobile Container Yard right in here. It's not a whole lot been done yet, but that's what that's going to be. If you come out around this way and go down like so, you see the Mobile Yard for the containers. Now, I hope I don't make y'all seasick. I'm gonna be turning things around here some. Now, if you go on down this way, you'll see there's a line here. There's a line here, and there's one down here. That is the lower main line. Both directions of the lower main line. On the other side of all these cedar trees is the Mobile Container Yard. And that's one of my challenges, is going to be making that transition to mountain area to sand and palm trees. But we'll see what we can do. Now, you go on down, but just again, there's the main line. There's the main line. Here's where the Mobile Yard. Let me back up here. Yeah, this is where the Mobile Yard splits off and goes down. And if you turn here and go back this way, you see we're getting in. You get into another yard. This yard is Norton, Virginia. And it's going to basically be handling coal cars. It's but the interesting thing about this is because it is Norton, I can have Northwest Southern, I can have L&N, I can have many different road names in here because Northwest Southern and L&N, they really didn't meet up much, but at Norton, they both delivered coal to and from there, and that's where the interstate railroad really got its foothold because it would be hauling coal from one of those lines to the other. And also, I don't know where it came from, but there was a little unknown railroad called the Central. It was there in Norton. Okay. Now,
You
as
must
we
have
go on
bought
home,
that at a train show.
huh?
Did you get that at one of our train shows?
Yeah, the last one. Now, one thing I want to point out in the construction, this here, I don't know. Okay, this here is part of the mushroom construction. I'm standing on ground level, and you can see what I see and what I can work on. Up here on the other side of this wall is the other part of the mushroom, the higher part, where you have to be on a platform to get to it. And one thing I came up with, I had never seen it before, is, well, when we decided we were going to run the coal line between the two, then we also realized we had room for staging. So we could have staging in the coal line under the main line, but above the lower line. But how do you get to it? Well, I came up with building this wall, and this is just regular blue styrofoam. And lo and behold, you take those out, and you can see the coal line right here, and the next 3 tracks over is staging track. It runs the whole length. Does that confuse everybody?
No. I'm trying to figure out the track plan. Mushrooms are incredibly difficult to understand, but I'm starting to get a feel for it.
Yeah. Okay, but and so underneath here, like I said, half of the coal line is hidden, but that's okay, and it gives us a lot of room for staging or things like if I want to run a coal train to Cincinnati and have it go on up into St. Louis and places that I don't have, I can run it into that staging area underneath here, let it sit there for 20 minutes, and then pull it out, coming back the other way. So with another train going by, you might not be able to hear me. Okay. Now, again, this is the thing. Okay, this is the Norton yard. I'm gonna flip this thing. This is the Norton yard. And when you get to here, I'm building, but another thing about me, you'll find out that I probably won't have anything totally completed, but I'll have a lot of stuff started. Because I'm not one to build all my framework and then put all my road bed down and then to get everything completed. I get bored doing one thing and I start another, and that keeps me interested. So this whole railroad is going to have places that really look good and other places that wondering why I haven't done anything on it yet. I built this. Here comes another thing. And I can, now these aren't that long, but I can run about, including say 2 engines and a caboose, I can run about a 10 or 11 car trains with my passing track. Okay. If you look at this wall, you'll see that the back wall is back here, but then this comes out and then angles out. So at this point, this thing right here is about a foot or maybe a little less than that further back before you get to that back wall. And when we get over here on the other side, I'll show you why I did that. So now we're getting ready to leave the mushroom part of it. This is just, and come in to where we have double layer. And if you, where we came through, this would be where we came by Norton. Okay, this would be where you'd be coming out on this side. Now, this is the main lower line, that's the main lower line, and this is the coal line. And there's a gravel quarry here, and the way I was going, that was the only place for me to put my building, but I didn't have any place for the quarry. But if you look back over there, now I do, because I took it away from the other side. And by doing that, and when we get up on the other side, you'll see it, it allowed me to leave all that open for when it's all finally done, where you can see that gravel pit and building it all from 3 different sides.
Jim, let me interrupt here for just a second. On the Central Railway Museum layout, there is a gravel quarry that you were largely responsible for before you left us for Florida. And at that gravel quarry, which for the rest of you is on the lower level of the museum layout on the back peninsula, and that quarry looks like it kind of goes forever back in there. And this looks like a very similar kind of concept to me.
It is.
Where you model the quarry building, but the quarry itself just kind of goes back into wherever.
Right. And to have that, to even to have any space for the wherever, you see the brown part of the wall there?
Yeah.
That's the fascia for, that side. Normally that would go all the way up another 4 foot. But by building it the way I did, I was able to stop it back there. And when you're on the upper level, you see that part of the pit then.
Yeah.
We get over with it. Okay. Now, this is where we come in to 2 levels. And the first thing you're going to see when you come around this corner, I'm going to back up a little bit, is you're going to see the Nashville Union Station. Hang on a second. Okay, you're going to see the Nashville Union Station. Now this is on the upper deck. I'll get around here where you can see it better. Now that's that, and that was built from that picture. So the trains actually go under the building. So that's Union Station. That's directly above that gravel quarry that we were looking at. Now you come on around, and going back down to the lower level, I have Loyal, Kentucky yard, which runs, now you can see I got wires, and well, that's another thing I'll tell you. I got wires. I got a lot yet to do. But this whole railroad right now, the railroad, the fans, the TV, if I have it on, is all running off the lights in the ceiling and the lights on the layout are all running off of 2 wall plugs. So you're going to see a lot of extension cords and things. I haven't gotten in and done the electrical work to put the plugs where I need them. But if you see a lot of wires, a lot of plugs. So, but this whole thing is running off of two outlets. All right, just a minute. This is going to the town of Loyal, Kentucky, and it again was a coal mining yard, and all it runs on around. Up above it is Brewston, Tennessee, and this is the back of Brewston. It track runs down there. We can get on around to the end. Okay. Get around to the end, then there's going to be, in this area is going to be a piggyback ramp and hoist and things to take tractor trailers off the train, and then down below where Loyal is again another big yard area, and both of these yards mainly are coal mine, or yard for coal, so there'll be a lot of coal cars and coal mines. Now, any questions on any of that yet?
Well, I will comment, Jim, that these are one end of the dog bones.
Yes.
So the upper dog bone and the lower dog bone are sitting one above the other here, where the trains are looping and then heading back. The other ends of the dog bones are over there, hidden behind that trestle.
Right.
In the helix.
Right. Because actually, the other end, it goes around the helix.
Yes.
The helix is in there doing its job, but the upper line and the lower line, well, in the coal line, actually go around the outside of the helix. Right?
Right.
Am I saying that right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Now, we're getting ready to do 2 things. One is get back to this side where the mushroom is. So that means we have to have a platform. And by the way, that's my switchboard, and it's set up to where if there's no light showing, then the main lines are all open. If I throw a switch and a light comes on, then that means you're leaving main lines. So as long as I'm doing what I'm doing tonight, I don't want any lights lit up. So that's that. Now, the other part is, if you look down, you'll see some steps. Those are plastic pallets that we're going to walk up to a platform. Now, we're looking across at the front of Brewston and what would be the back of Loyal, looking down, at where the piggyback ramp will be. Now, this is a coal line, and this is the upper main line. This is a switchover so that a car an engine can go from the coal line to the main line and get over to the helix and go around the helix. It can't get to the helix from the coal line, so it has to switch over to the main line. Okay, this is a old window manufacturing plant, This is going to be a salvage yard. You can see there where the track will be going in for those facilities. This, whoop, here comes another train. This building, I'm not sure what it's going to be. It may be a mill, or a flour mill, or something. I don't know, but it'll end up being something. And there's one line here that runs into it. These lines here, that's just a small yard to spot freight cars that go to these different little industries around here. And if you come on around this way, now you're on the other side of Union Station. And this here isn't a whole lot yet. That's just a conglomerate of old buildings I've stacked up there, and my idea is to make that a look like, three-dimensional part of Nashville. But right now they're just piled up in there. Now I'm going to drop down to the second level, and that's where you can see the gravel pit and where the gravel comes from. All right. Now, the next yard, this is one of the pieces that I wanted to save. If you look at it, you might wonder why. I don't know, but this is my Nashville yard. And it's right around the Union Station. Oh, look, there's an old passenger train there. Go around now. When you're going through here, you can take one line and it takes you right through the middle of the yard. This line right here, it's right through the middle of the yard. You can do what you want when you get here. If you take this line over here, it takes you around the yard. And these two buildings, the one in the background, the one on the right, that is a RIP building, a repair and place building. Now these were already here and they had to be kind of torn up, messed up and moved the whole operation. And then this building on the left is going to be just a car repair building. And like I said, this part right here is part of what I built originally. And along with that I built this gorge in this corner. Now, again, this doesn't look like too much right now because it hasn't been fixed up again yet, but it's just a river gorge there. As a matter of fact, if you'd want to see how that was built, the newsletter, September 2010, I did an article showing that being built, if you're interested in that. And then you get past that corner, you get into the other leg of my L that I had built earlier on in life, and it goes down to let's see, about right here. Now the interesting thing, and again, all of this was built and then got torn apart, so it doesn't look too good right now. Now the interesting thing about this, and Sandy, you'll like this because I know you like what I'm getting ready to say. Here comes another train. This 8-foot section here, what that is that's the John Allen time saver.
Oh.
So an operator could stand right here many hours, spots some cars on this track and move to all this different industry around here. So that's what that is. We go on down. Then this just gets into some oil industry and different industry that I got to figure out what I'm going to put where and how I'm going to do it. Now there is an interesting point here, or to me these things are interesting. I want you to realize that this track right here and this track, let me get back here. This track right here and this track right here, that's the main line, okay? I want you to watch those two tracks and see what happens. So you tell what happens there?
They cross.
They cross. No signal, no nothing. They just run across each other. So if you got two trains running on that line, you got to be aware of that. And that's the reason I say I can run 5 trains by myself and control them and keep them from running into each other. And the reason I could put 2 on the upper line, 2 on the lower line, and 1 on the coal line. But the reason I have to be here to watch it is if I'm not, the 2 on the upper line eventually will run into each other. You got to watch them when they get close to that crossing.
Isn't
All right.
that junction called Chicken Junction?
Yeah, yeah. All right, we're getting, I don't know how I'm doing on time, but we're good. Okay, now we're at the end of that mushroom part. We're getting ready to go down the steps, and we're getting ready to look at, again, what I call the Allen wall. And you've seen somewhat of quite a bit, most of it, just looking at trains a while ago. But that's the Allen wall. There's a track right above the top of the bridge. Then there's the track at the bridge, and then a track down below. And I see one train. Oh, there's one train coming, but it's not. That one's going across the top. Oh, there's one coming there. There you go. That's what we was looking for.
Perfect timing.
Okay. Now, this wall, as a matter of fact, that wall is my garage doors there. I built a frame wall with drywall, put it up there, and use that for my Allen wall. Now, I've forgotten. I keep trying to remember. On the layout at the museum, the town that's under the scenery, what town is that?
Under which part of the scenery?
When you first come in the doorway.
Seneca.
Seneca.
Okay, Seneca. The reason I want to know is when you get, let me get down off these steps. So if you get down here, if you look back this way, I have a coal mine. That's built in there like Seneca. And you can't really reach the building, but you can reach the cars and, move them in and out. But that's the coal mine there. And back up this way, that's the helper engine at the coal mine. There's a river that runs down through there. And then the creek that runs to it somewhere in there. Okay. And then this little road runs up to an old mining supply community that it's seen better days. It's not really used for much of anything anymore. It's kind of run down, but one time it was a busy little place. Now we're at the Helix, the Zone Bridge. I don't know, I guess all of you are familiar with Steve Zone. That was his bridge that I was very, very fortunate to be able to get a hold of. That's the Zone Bridge.
Jim, as an aside, I am so happy to see one of Steve's bridges on your layout. For those of you who don't know, we have a couple of Zone A bridges on the backside of the back peninsula on the museum layout. When Steve got to the point that he could no longer get to his basement, he said, well, you can all have my bridges if you find a place for them. We found a place for 2 of them in the museum, and apparently Jim has found a place for 1, or maybe that's 2 of them strung together.
No, that was one. That was one bridge.
It looks awesome.
I would like to interject
Here's the
that
most.
Steve's railroad was narrow gauge. So this is a narrow gauge bridge. And what's happened is that the old narrow gauge rails are now the guardrails, and that the running rails, actually the way it was built on the Denver Rio Grande Western, the guardrails were actually outside the running rails. You can imagine that.
Is Howard there?
And so all that's happened is that the old guardrails were replaced with bigger rail to make the standard gauge running rails, and where the old narrow gauge running rails were are now the standard gauge guardrails. And that's why there's enough room on the ties on that bridge to put standard gauge track on it.
I can see that John Johnston has thrown up the picture again of our museum layout, showing our narrow gauge train running right behind his head over the Zone A bridge that we have at the museum.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, at the museum, the bridge crosses what we call Zone A Creek. And you will also see a plaque on the wall, on the back wall of the museum. That is the plaque that Steve Zone won for building that bridge and winning a first place award for structures at an NMRA convention in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And I visited Steve Zone's bridge layout before he died. And I got to tell you, it was bridges, bridges, bridges. He had completed his main line with a monstrous number of bridges. I think there were 15 or 16 of them. He had virtually no other scenery there, nothing else done. But man, the guy loved to build bridges, and he built some great ones.
Excellent.
Yeah. That was not good. All right. Well, we're getting close to the end. You come on around the helix. You end up in a spot like this, which up where the blue is, that's the upper main line. Where the dark gray is, that's supposed to be inside the tunnel for the coal line. And then down on the lower line, here comes a train around the lower line. That gets you back over to where we earlier talked about Birmingham and Cincinnati. Cincinnati is just going to be a staging yard. Birmingham is going to be a pretty good sized yard. And if you go back in here, and this is where, like I said, I don't have lighting back here. I don't do everything complete when I do it. But the yard will run from here to there. That's probably a 16-foot yard. Then there's going to be a car shop, a engine shop, or engineering building, turntable, yard. And then back here is another industrial type area that will have, I think, 4 or 5 places to spot cars. And that pretty much is the railroad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for the tour. You have taken on a huge project here and made an impressive amount of progress in the time since you've left us and moved to Florida.
Yeah, and like I said, Bob Folsom deserves a lot of credit too. I'm looking for, I don't see it right now, but one of the things I like on this, if you look behind the Zone A bridge, right, right there where my finger is, all the way behind it, the coal line runs through there, and you'll see the trains run by there on the coal line, which is interesting to see. Okay, any questions?
Yeah, Jim, what's the size of your total room there?
It's my garage is 20 by 24.
Fantastic job. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Hey, Jim.
And it's a mess, but you know, I'm the only one that ever sees it. Yes.
This is Mac. I'm gonna test
Oh, hi,
your.
Mike.
I'm gonna test your L&N trivia here. Give you the L&N
Well,
trivia
I won't
question.
know a lot of it, but I'll try. Okay.
L&N had minimal presence in the state of North Carolina. Where in North Carolina was the L&N?
I don't know.
Asheville, maybe, had to be extreme western North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It was Western North Carolina. It came into Murphy, North Carolina, and connected with Southern Railway's Murphy branch.
Okay.
And CSX, in their infinite wisdom, back in 1989, I believe it was, tore out the L&N track from Murphy back down to Mineral Bluff, Georgia, 20 miles. And what they did was sever the line from Asheville to Atlanta,
Oh, really?
going what I call the back way. You could go all the way from Asheville to Atlanta before they tore out that L&N line out of Murphy. Anyway, I guess my motor car trips I've been on, I probably put several thousand miles on L&N lines, including the Hiawassee Loop line numerous times. But I've been all the way from Canton, Georgia, all the way to Etowah, Tennessee on my motor car on that hook and eye line. It's a real scenic one. Jim, fantastic job. Thanks for showing it to us.
Pardon?
Then the question is, how many bedrooms do you have when we all come to see you?
I've got 3 bedrooms and 2 sofa couches.
How many operators do you need?
Well, I tell you, now the biggest problem with my railroad is I don't have, as you probably can tell walking through here, I don't have a whole lot of wide aisles and things. But if you don't mind squeezing in, I really think if everything was running and working, I could use like 7 operators, and half of those wouldn't be moving, but about 4 feet at it, to do everything, like with the time saver, and up here in Nashville Yard and all. But because you need, with this railroad, you have to follow your train, whatever level it's on. You've got to follow it because you won't see it a lot of the time. And so there's 3 operators right there just following their trains.
Those are the skinny guys. The rest of us get to stand in one place.
Yeah, well, that's true because I'm about to the point where I have to stand in one place anymore.
Hey, gentlemen, it's Bill Green. I have a question. How many power districts do you have?
2. Isn't that right, Bob?
Yes.
2, yeah. It's got the
The coal
upper,
line, yeah, the coal line is in the same power district as the upper level.
right.
And then the lower is by itself. You might show them your board where you have
Okay.
the 6 reversers.
I do have 6 reverse loops in it.
So you concentrated all of the electrical in one location, and there are indeed 6 reverse loops. And those are those, railroad circuits? Is that the name of those? who makes those boards. They're the same ones we use at the museum.
Yeah.
And so the output wires have to go from there over to where the reverse loops are. And then on the coal line, those boards have the switch throwing capabilities, and you can program them for slow motion like tortoises or snap switches, whichever you like.
Now, another little side story that's interesting is when I lived in South Carolina, I built all the framework. We built all the framework. We laid all the main track. And then I moved. It was a matter of cutting it apart and taking it apart. And I put it in a trailer and brought it all down here, and it sit for probably a year and a half. But then when Bob and I got together and started putting it back together, rather than a 20 by 20 garage, I had a 20 by 24 garage. And lo and behold, we had that extra space. We made it bigger. We added that's when we added the Birmingham yard, and we made the Allen wall a lot deeper. So the framework and all has been put up, taken down, and put back up again.
Jim, this is a pretty darn big layout you got there. How many freight cars do you have?
I've got about 130 that I have, you know, Katy couplers, metal wheels, and weighted. I've probably got another 130 or 50 that need things done to them.
And how many will you have ultimately?
Well, that if I do, I'll end up with probably somewhere around between 225 and 250. And then I've got right now, I think about 20 engines, of which 3 or 4 of them don't have any decoders in them. Out of the 16 that do, about half of them have sound and half of them don't. So that's about where I'm at on those. But anybody that's in this area is welcome to come by.
Jim, what part of Florida are you from? Where are
I
you
live
at?
I live in Lakeland, Florida, which Lakeland. If you're familiar with I-4 that runs from Tampa to Daytona, across the thing, it runs from Tampa to Orlando and then on to Daytona. I live about 45 minutes from Tampa and about 45 minutes from Orlando.
So you're more on the West Coast side.
Yeah. I got a coal car train that has disappeared. I see it too. There it is.
Have you been running the same 3 trains since we started this?
Now it's going. Yes.
I'm impressed.
Yeah. Well,
If I make it 3 laps around, I'm happy.
you know, I tell you the truth, Sandy, I'm impressed too, because it, you know, I worked on it a lot, and well, when we first moved down here, I didn't work because I was doing things with the house and all that kind of stuff. Okay, there's the coal line going underneath in the staging areas. But anyway, it gets. I hadn't done much on it for probably a year, and that's one of the reasons I agreed to do something, because it would make me get out here and get started. And but here, I want to show you all this. Okay, That's the coal lines. I think, see if it goes behind that bridge. Hang on a second. No, we'll get it when it comes around. But I did everything I knew how to do and what to do, and then finally Tuesday, and I warned him ahead of time. Tuesday, I called Bob, and we spent about, I don't know, probably 5 hours or longer FaceTiming, and me showing him what the switch looked like or what the problem was looked like, and he talked me through getting it fixed. So, okay, now this train goes through that tunnel. Now, watch, this is what I like. See it behind the Zone A bridge?
Yeah.
That's not on the bridge, that's behind it.
Yep.
Hey, Jim.
Mhm.
Jim.
Yeah.
You might check that train. Does it have all its cars? Because it has no caboose on it.
No, the coal train, I didn't put a caboose on it.
Okay. All right.
The others I did. So, that's it.
You'll find it eventually.
Yeah. It can be hard to find them on this layout, I tell you. Now, when I'm working on it, all those pieces of styrene that I, can take down, I'll take them all down so I can see a lot quicker.
Hey, Jim, can I comment on your backdrop there on the Allen wall?
Yeah.
Raise your phone up. That's it. So how did you achieve that misty look that really is, it implies distance, even though that's a shallow scene. It doesn't, the upper line is almost exactly next to the backdrop.
Yeah. And
So all of that depth is achieved by your artistry.
yeah, as a matter of fact, let me grab something here. These bushes here, those are just flat against the wall, and the track's right down below them. Now,
Yeah, the track is only a few inches from the wall.
yeah. Now, the only thing I can really say, Bob, is again watching Jim Kimball, and then trying some things, and I guess luck as much as anything, because I painted all of this backdrop. Here's some more over here. I painted all that, and the method I ended up using was I'd take like 3 different color shades of spray paint and just kind of spray it like I thought I wanted, and then I'd take the sponge and of darker greens and browns and things and sponge it some. And I guess it's the mist. There's the mist from the different shades of spray paint that I sprayed on it, because it wasn't anything I did intentionally.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
That looks beautiful.
That is absolutely awesome.
But, and this in here was the same. Let's see if I can get a shot of it. That, yeah, that back in there is the same way. Here comes the train.
I'm remembering a session that Jim Kimball, for those of you who don't know him, Jim Kimball was a professor of art at Southern Wesleyan, member of our Railway Museum, and he painted almost all the backdrops at the museum. And at one point, he conducted a training set, a workshop on how to paint backdrops. And I think we all kind of picked up different pieces of his techniques. Bob, I've seen some Jim Kimball-esque things on your layout, Jim Reece, obviously, and I've got some on mine. It's interesting to see some of these old members of the Railway Museum, like Steve Zone and Jim Kimball, and how much they've really influenced those of us who are building layouts today.
Yeah. Very much so I learned a whole lot from him.
Now I am looking at my layout here, and I'm wondering if Jesse's going to wake up or if he's gone for the night.
No. But that's it's fun. I miss not having the people there to share it with though.
Have you found a group of modelers down there that you whose layouts you visit or you work together?
Well, Bob's he was with me once. There, Plant City, which is about 20 miles from here, they have a model railroad club, and they have a building. They've got some pretty nice, big size layouts in. And I've been over there and seen them, but I promised myself until I got this thing up and running, I wasn't going to join anything because I know, and I enjoyed it. I'm not fussing about it, but the 6 years I was president, I didn't start building a railroad till after I wasn't president any longer. And
Yeah.
I knew if I got involved with club, I'll end up not getting everything done that I want to do. So I haven't pursued anybody else yet, but I'm getting close to the point where I'm ready to.
Well, you certainly have something down there that a lot of guys who are modelers would love to see.
Well, who's going to come by and see me?
Well, John Johnston and I are coming down to help you operate. I know that.
That's great. That's great.
I may have to wait on my vaccination. I have
Yeah.
a COVID test though, so I'm at least alive for now.
Can you create the cards by what you've seen now, or do I need to give you more information?
Create the cards. You want cards for 400 cars?
No. However you do it, you don't do it that way now, do you? How y'all got it?
I've only got about 65 cars on my layout, and creating cards is a hard, long process.
Is that the way you operate at the club now with cards?
No, we use a scenario card system. Oh, is that what you want, a scenario card system?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It sounds like I need to make a visit as soon as I'm able.
Yeah. Find out what we can do.
Are there any other comments or questions? I think maybe we're about at the end of the line for tonight's program.
I just noticed, it's so nice to have, just to be able to reconnect. I mean, COVID's done us a favor. At least we're, having, we got Jim back, it feels like part of the club again.
Yeah.
And I saw Ralph Watson earlier too.
Yeah, Ralph was here. I counted at our high point, we had 17 tonight who were connected. So this program is clearly drawing some interest. Yeah. I think we're eventually going to have to make a decision as to whether or not we want to continue this indefinitely. There are lots of other layouts we haven't seen, starting with John with your layout, and I think we have that next month in October. Second Thursday evening in October, John Johnston will treat us to long coal drags in a much smaller space than Jim Reece is using. And then in November, it'll either be Tom Langdale or myself at our layouts, and we'll have to decide sooner or later whether we want to continue having home virtual layout tours into the future once we're all able to get back together, or whether we'll just go back to live programs at the museum.
Well, personally, I think it's
I know
to have these these meetings that we're doing now on Zoom. I really enjoy once a month looking at everybody else, what they're doing. It's really a good idea, and I think we should keep it going. I don't think we need to stop at the end of November, December. No matter what, just keep it
You know,
going.
right. I agree with you, and it doesn't have to be like a full, an hour-long thing. It could be if there's a particular part of my layout that I've now tackled and completed it type thing, just a short thing where you've seen it before, and now here's what it looks like now.
And it doesn't have to be, you know, a fantastic layout. I mean, we've had Bob Folsom, we've had Reece, we've had some great things to look at and some really highly finished modeling. Next month, and we're going to go from the sublime to the ridiculous. You know, I don't have any scenery. I've got, you know, the Plywood Pacific plus some plaster mountains, and I'm starting to throw a little paint on them. So what you'll see on mine is just sort of, here's what the building process looks like. And,
Well, for what it's worth, I love looking at layouts that are partially completed because you can see what techniques people are using and how they've laid out their track plan and utilized their space. And if you just look at a finished picture of a finished layout, you don't get to see all of that.
Right. Well, and another part is if you're just starting or you're just into that phase, showing it to somebody and it helps you get stimulated to go ahead and do more.
Absolutely.
You know,
I'm going to stay up till 4 a.m. working on my layout after this, Jim.
You should have done it last night. That's where I was.
Yeah, I'm sure. I noticed behind Bill Green's picture there, a backdrop and what looks like a bit of a layout. So, Bill, maybe you're on tap for an upcoming session.
Well, it's far, far, far from being completed, but it's moving along. So I'm taking copious notes on all of these with ideas. So thank you very much. And I think this needs to be continued because I think it's interesting, it's informative, and it's great to see what people are doing, finished or unfinished. I like the unfinished part because you can see exactly how people are doing things.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on that one.
Now,
Well, with that, I think we're about ready to sign off here, unless anybody else wants to make a closing comment.
I have one question. Last Thursday, you had a meeting, a Zoom meeting. Now, is that an open meeting or is that just for officers?
well, that was an open meeting. That was the general membership.
Yeah, it's general membership meeting, and the recording will be up as soon as I can get it sent over to Wayne.
Oh, okay, because I didn't know what meeting it was, so I didn't do anything, but I'd sit in on the regular meetings. Okay.
And, you know, we ought to be able to do, even when we are back in the museum and having meetings in person, there's no reason why we can't have a camera going and have that on Zoom.
Absolutely. Jim, thank you so much.
All right.
It was a wonderfully informative and entertaining evening, and far, far better from vegging out in front of the tube and watching something stupid.
And
Thank you.
I thank all of y'all for coming and visiting.
We'll see you all. We will see you all next month for John Johnston's home layout tour.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Good night.
Right.